Welcome back to Selling Your Business with David King. I'm David King, and I'm the author of Selling Your Business Begin with the End in Mind, and it's available on Amazon. Today, I am joined by exit consultant John Ovrom. John, welcome.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
John is the founder of Exit Consulting, a firm in Coronado, California. Lovely Coronado. Anybody might remember visiting Coronado. It's the location of the Hotel Del. Serves businesses in Southern California and works with them to prepare to be sold and helps them through the sale process. So John, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and
Sure.
how you got where you are today?
Well, I got here not based on a plan. I didn't decide that I wanted to go into exit consulting or be a business transaction guy. I've always been an entrepreneur. So I was a military kid, and when I moved around, I was not raised on a lot of money. My dad basically said, we'll give you what you need, and whatever you want, you better go earn. And my parents' definition of need and mine were different. So I had to go work. So I've been working, since you were young enough, 12, pulling weeds and, doing things around people's houses. And I've always worked and really found it much more enjoyable to be self-employed. And so I decided to go to college and got an accounting degree because people said, hey, if you want to run your own business, know your numbers. So my dad being an engineer, accounting seemed pretty basic to me because that's where my brain worked. So I went and worked for Arthur Anderson. Now I'm dating myself there while my girlfriend, now wife, went to law school, and then I was going to get my MBA. All of that went according to the plan until my wife graduated, had a job. I quit, was going to go start working, go for my MBA, and the economy tanked. And so then I was unemployed without a job, put a bunch of emails out, and my cousin said, hey, let's start a construction company. And I said, well, I don't know anything about construction. And he said, well, I don't know anything about business. So, 23 and 25, a few beers and a couple of napkins, ta-da, we're now in business. And so basically started construction because that was a business opportunity. Grew that company together until we had about 50 guys and had multiple entities, multiple companies, painting, contract, got my broker's license, developing, and just been an entrepreneur and seeing opportunity in everything. We sold the company 15 years ago, and that experience was really bad. I didn't enjoy that experience at all. I didn't think that the people out there, the brokers and the people were very servicing the smaller business. And so after that, I just started helping people, and I found myself basically really enjoying helping the business owner as a business owner. And so for the last 15 years, this business has grown into being a CEO when it comes to a transaction and figuring out what it takes to get out. We don't look at it from a professional side of, this is what a suit and tie says. We look at it as a street fighting, cage fighting entrepreneur and understanding what it means. And we really connect with our clients. And so that's kind of, we've ended up here. So 15 years later, we now have 13 people on team. We're interviewing for 2 more, and we're continuing to grow. And it's been good. Thank you.
So generally, if you could back up just a step, tell us about exit consulting and what you do for clients when you start working for them. What are your typical clients, their size, their industries,
okay,
and what do you help them to do?
So the typical world that is out there is you have a transaction person who wants to sell your business, and whether that's an investment banker, an M&A, or a business broker, they basically just do listings, and they want to sell your business. And if you're not interested in selling your business within a year, they kind of say, hey, I don't want to talk to you. Call me when you're ready. Mm-hmm. And that's the transaction side. And then you've got the consultants out there that are CFO, CEO kind of transition people that will try to help your business get ready to sell, but they're more focused in one particular area. You've got some financial planners that are going to try to sell you a plan that they put on a shelf. And oftentimes there's a lot of what happens after And so we designed the business more about the business owner. And our first question is, what's the win? What we do differently is we don't care what you want to do. I don't care if you want to sell it third party, you want to give it to your kid, you want to sell it to a key employee, you want to do an ESOP. We deal with partnerships that when one partner wants to leave. So just this week, I have 2 that want to go to market, 1 that we're meeting where the 2 partners want to give it to their 2 kids. So each partner has a different perspective. Each of their kids is different. So we're meeting with them to try to figure out what that looks like. We have another one where an owner wants to buy another person's business, and they just want some help and coaching on that. Another one is saying, I don't even know what my choices are. What's the difference between me handing it to somebody? How long does it take? There's just trying to answer the CEO's question of what's their win and let them understand all their choices. It's really hard to get information on the internet out there. It's all about service providers trying to sell service. And so we don't care if we can consult them and help them grow their business. We don't really have a strategy in mind. Our strategy is, what do you want and how realistic is that? So that's our approach, different than most.
I can totally see the need that you're feeling, because it's highly fragmented in terms of everyone's expertise and the types of services they're willing to offer. Someone that's just looking for a tax advisor goes to their tax advisor, their attorney, their estate planner, their investment advisor. But being able to integrate all that together in advance of a sale transaction, it's usually they don't look for some sort of overriding plan until they get right to the sale. And it's kind of, well, if we could rewind here a little bit, we might have done things differently back when. So how early in the stage of a business's life do you typically start working with them?
When I started the business, I thought I was going to be an exit consultant and helping people design their exit. And that would be, 2 to 5 years out and help them design that exit. I have found that most business owners actually don't plan that far. Most of the business owners, as much as I would love to say that they're going to plan it out, they don't. They usually come to a place where they're about a year. They're like either ready right now, like I'm done, or, hey, I think next year I want to get rid of it. I would say my thought was my ideal is 2 to 3 years out, but realistically it's within a year when business owners finally are ready to start focusing on this, because so many business owners are so responsive. Like most business owners don't even have a budget. Like, why would I budget? Because I don't know what it's going to be in the future. Like, because you've been doing it for 30 years, you're $30 million in revenue. We ought to have a budget. They don't budget. They don't plan. When they're ready, they're ready. And that's the way business owners, particularly G1, the generation 1 business owners that are real kind of cowboys and mavericks, they don't plan. I'd love to work with them 2 to 5 years, because then you can really maximize the value and you can really work through options. That's the ideal time, but realistically, I would tell you most people are within a year, and then it takes another year to sell. So 1 to 2 years is realistic.
But you do work with some companies that you get as clients earlier.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the clients that like, I have a client that we did a broker's opinion of value, a BOV, and he says, hey, his revenue is doing about 5 million and he wants to sell it at 15 million, because we did a math and said, okay, here's what it's worth now. Here's what it would be worth then. And if that's the case, can you help me grow it? So we're on his team. Our consulting side is growing his company to 5 to 15 million. We have another client who was going from 3 to 10 million, and so, but they actually didn't start with the plan. They just found out that the value of their company wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And then they said, well, if that's all I'm going to get, I guess I better put a plan in place. And so that's where the consulting side works in. That's why we have the consulting side, because most of it's education. Dave, that most of our clients just don't know what they don't know. And we spend so much of our time just trying to help them understand the different scenarios and the different options.
And how much time should you, in an ideal situation, how much time would you have with a client working with them towards their exit, T minus 5, 2 minus 1. I mean, how many years in advance do you need in an ideal situation to plan for the proper exit?
Three is ideal.
Mhm.
That's kind of the minimum because we need 2 good years of financials, right? 3 good years of financials is kind of the ideal, but 2 years working with them and then putting it on the market, and it takes about a year to sell. So if we can get 3 good years of good financials, so if we're anywhere from 3 to 5 that's our target, right? That's the dream. Most business owners we meet with say they're 5 years out when they're not ready, because it's far enough away for them to not actually do anything, but close enough that they're like, well, I'm still thinking about it. And every year they're still 5 years out. If you ask business owners, hey, when are you ready to go? Oh, I've still got 5 more years in me, because it's a safe number. If they say I'm 2 years out, they're like, I better get something going. And 10 years is too far. Mm-hmm. So we'd love to work with them 3 to 5. Unfortunately, most of ours are 1 to 2. And we get 3 to 5s, and those are the great wins because they're actually planning.
Yeah, and you stay on with your clients through the completion of a sale, the closing of a transaction. You actually stand in their corner when they get their title fight, their big day in the ring, and make sure that they can close a deal. Yeah,
so we typically kind of consider ourselves like a Sherpa, right? Like we've done this mountain ride enough times. But we're not going to just give them a map and say climb Mount Everest. We're actually on their side, walking Mount Everest with them and saying, hey guys, okay, we're going to take a break here today because it's going to be a long run tomorrow. Get yourself rested, be ready. And then this is how the days are going to go. And then when they get to the top, we get to the top with them. We are not just outside people. We are boots on with them, and then even post close. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we work with the transition, because if it's an asset sale and they have to close their company up afterwards, a lot of times they want help closing the company up that they just sold the assets of. Or if it's an internal sale and they're selling it to their key employees or to their kids, a lot of times business owners are not really good at being managers. They're really good at doing work. So trying to coach the new employees into being a CEO and a COO, we stay on afterwards because owners have to sell or carry so much of the paper. They want help coaching their kids or those senior managers.
Okay. And do you typically fill the role of, say, an investment banker, business broker? You don't bring on somebody else to do that work, or does Exit Consulting typically handle that?
So Exit Consulting has two divisions. We have the consulting side, which is really trying to drive value in getting the company ready to sell. Yeah. And then we have the transaction side, which is we are a business broker. We're licensed in the state of California, and we do a lot of transactions. So like right now we have $60 million worth of real estate $60 million worth of business transactions that we have on the market. Mm-hmm. So we do quite a few. We have between 6 to 10 listings. And they're everywhere from, we just closed a $30 million sale, and then we closed a $1.2 million last month. So, most of them are in that kind of $2 to $10 million range. Mm-hmm. Picking up 2 more listings. One's listed at $4 million and another one's gonna be listed at $3 million. We're picking those 2 up this week. So that's kind of what we're doing on the outside third-party sale.
What's the mix in terms of asset sales, stock sales, mergers?
So, the smaller deals are definitely, which I'm saying are kind of the $1 million, $2 million. We're doing asset. It's interesting on the stock. We do a lot of construction or a lot of manufacturing, and the stock sales are definitely more than half of our deals. If there is and they'll do the 338H10, where it is the stock sale from a legal but an asset for tax. Right. And it's mainly because, like in construction, so many of the contracts are work under progress, mm-hmm. that it's difficult to convert a lot of, or if there's a major manufacturing distributor contract with like a Costco or with the military, if you do an asset sale, it becomes something that you have to deal with. And so it becomes a little more hairy in that type of environment. So people are looking at stock, with key employees or their family members, that's oftentimes stock for simplicity.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on the idea of the client themselves.
Who are your typical buyers? Are they serial entrepreneurs, strategic buyers, financial buyers, private equity, family offices? Do you get a mix of all those?
So really interesting now with COVID, right? We've seen a lot more private buyers come out with COVID. We saw the same thing in 2008 through 2012, where a lot of senior managers got let go, or kind of had a reflection on life. So they put enough money into their 401k. They're around 40. They've done well, but they want to try this entrepreneurial. They want to scratch that itch. And so SBA has made it available to them. Financing is really good. So the individuals have actually come out in the last year, where prior to COVID, we had some individuals, but people were pretty happy with their jobs. There was a lot of self-reflection going on with COVID, and people are thinking, this is my time to hop. And so we actually have more individual, but to be honest, the individuals have to be under, we just sold one for 2.5 million. But you got to be pretty well off to be able to get an SBA for a $2 million, $3 million purchase. So, once you start getting into the 5 to 10, they don't qualify. So anything under a couple $1 million, particularly under $1 million, are private or strategics. Strategics are always out there right now because the money's so cheap, and they're sitting on cash. So we're seeing a lot of growth acquisition that way, because it's hard to get good people. And we're seeing it not necessarily competitors buying competitors, but we're seeing it vertical. Mm-hmm. So if there's a vertical line up and they're part of the vertical service, they're picking up everybody along the same vertical to try to be a full integrated package. Not just, this is my direct competitor, but this is my whole manufacturing line or service line. And so definitely strategics are there. Private equity guys, there's a lot of money out there. The private equity guys are kind of niche-y. I found them, they're not really into the service business as much. Some of they might be more in the tech side or the medical side. But professional engineering services, construction services, and some of the service providers where there's a lot of market, they're not really interested in that niche so much because it's so owner driven, right? And so manufacturing, a lot of times there's some pretty heavy risk associated with some of the smaller companies with manufacturing because they have customer concentration, or they have relationship issues. So definitely private equity when you get into the bigger deals.
Okay.
But on the smaller ones, I would say it's strategics, and then below that would be the individuals, my experience.
I had heard that about strategic acquisitions, and it's consistent with my experience that the most value will often be another business that's making a strategic acquisition, but not just someone buying market share. Someone who sees this as a fit to an existing line of business, but not the same thing they've already got.
And it does get kind of hairy in some negotiations. So we had a manufacturer who's been supplying a fairly large company, and they were 40% of their revenue. But and this company said, yeah, we don't want them to go to somebody else. We don't want them to go to the competitors and not be able to provide us what we have. But I'm not going to give you a multiple on our own work. Right. So then, then it was like, oh, well, that's a little bit of a challenge. That's not right. So they're like, yeah, but why would I buy myself at a multiple with the gross profit, right? So it can get a little hairy when you're selling it to your key customer, or you're in a vertical line and someone in the line wants to pick you up.
When you're working with smaller businesses that may have one owner, maybe a husband and wife, maybe two owners, how much of their net worth do you typically see tied up in the business versus, other assets? Typically, with smaller businesses, I've heard as high as 85% is the average percentage of small business owners' net worth tied up in companies. And it depends on, what's the definition of a small business. But that's a lot of your net worth, and it's amazing that more people aren't planning for these sorts of exits.
It is it is amazing. Yes. I don't know the percentages. I will tell you that like some of the manufacturers and some of the bigger contractors have bought buildings, and that the buildings themselves that they're rented, their rent is actually worth more than their business.
Okay.
So that was a good strategy, right? And when I kind of ran the math, I kind of said, hey, if you're going to be in a building for 10 years, you might want to buy it, based on the math that I was running. But it's always great where people have both the business and the building, so they can build some equity. Some of the other businesses, particularly the older people that have been in their 70s, they're more conservative, and they've sucked some money out every year and rediversified it and different. It's the growth model companies where people struggle, is that they keep putting money back in because they're thinking that this business is going to be their liquidity event, and this is going to be their exit. And there are some businesses like mine and yours and service providers where it's hard to get a large liquidity event out of. It's better to, it's a good exit strategy to take money out every year, put it in and diversify it, and still at the end sell your company for not much, but at least you've used it. Though the exit strategy is don't reinvest all your money back into something that's not going to build value. Let it go. Understand that business model is not going to have a 10-time multiple, and just take money out every year, and in the end sell it for $1 million or $2 million, which is great. But you've taken $2 million out of the whole year instead of not taking anything out, continuing to put it in and hoping that there's going to be a $3 to $5 million liquidity event. And the older generation has been good about just putting it aside and saving for it. They don't do debt. They don't like debt. and they're very protective about it. But still a substantial amount of their personal net worth is absolutely in the business. I mean, by far, our biggest referral is an estate attorney or a financial planner, because this is a large liquidity event at a high risk for their families.
Right, right. Now, with the business owners that also own the real estate, do you typically see them sold together, or holding back the real estate, leasing it out to the buyer, having an income stream, and then maybe selling it later?
I don't usually sell the real estate.
Okay.
Usually the buyers, even when they're big buyers, want like a first right of refusal or want a first look or want opportunity, but they just want to focus on the business right now.
Right.
They want to have a 5-year lease, and maybe with a 5-year option or a 2. They just don't know where it's going to go. And so they just don't want to make that additional cash contribution into that. They want to save the cash for the business. So business owners typically will keep the building, get a decent lease, and then if they want to sell it to somebody else, they can, with that lease in place. But most business owners keep it for cash flow for a while, because they're carrying the paper anyways for the business if there's any carryback. And so it kind of keeps them all engaged together for at least a few years until they kind of figure it all out, because transitions are tough. It's a tough time after you close.
Do most of your transactions have an earn-out component on the purchase price?
The construction guys, yes. Actually, put it this way, all of the clients where there is a deep owner relationship that is at risk has an earn-out part to it.
Okay.
So if the owner is central to the organization and is key, then they usually have an earn-out portion. If the owner's not as involved and they've got a good manager, general manager, CEO, COO that's there, then there's less of a need for it. I mean, I wouldn't even, like, I had an owner pass away and they had put in a CEO for 3 years, and the company grew actually better and was doing better. And then when we took it to market, we said no earnout. There is no reason for an earnout. There's nothing that this owner's doing.
Yeah.
It's a widow who's getting a check. The business is running, the business is going, take it the way it is or not. But if you are an owner centric where it's a wagon wheel and you're sitting in the middle of all the ownership and everything runs by you, you're going to have an earnout.
Okay.
Or just not get paid very much.
Yeah.
You say owners want a lot of money and they're like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. So you got to run the risk with me.
Okay. That's a helpful insight there. So what difficulties and mistakes do you see through transactions? What are some of the most recurring issues that come up, most common problems?
The owners every time. It's the owners. I would
Unrealistic.
say it's the buyers, but it's not the buyers, it's the owners. The owners, selling your business and leaving your business is very emotionally hard. It's very difficult, particularly for generation one, G1 business owners, when your name's on the building and you've built it from nothing, and this is your life, and your business and your family are all combined, and your fun relationships are your business relationships, and you don't know what you're going to do next. It is the biggest issue we have is an owner being willing to not come to the office. And when you've been an entrepreneur in a street fight the whole time, it's like asking, Drew Brees to retire, right? Or Peyton Manning, or any successful athlete this is all they've done since they were 10 is dream of this. And then you got to tell them to walk off the field. Unless there's a physical need, my wife, my life, my family, something, they have a hard time leaving. And so emotionally, I think business owners use money as a reason to not leave. Oh, that's not the right price. Oh, that's not. I mean, literally, we just brought a client at 10 million. He's 80 years old. We brought him a $10 million offer. And the land is $25 million. And he said, not now. Not now.
Yeah.
Not now. Not now. When? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there is no reason that at 80 you should say.
Yeah.
So so my biggest challenge is an owner's willingness, and we saw this during COVID. We lost half our listings in April of last year, right? So we had a whole bunch of listings, we lost half. And the other half, all the clients came in and said, John, I'm done, sell it. And we sold them all. We actually had our best year last year because our owners just said, we're done, sell it. And they allowed the market, and they allowed it to happen instead of, yeah, but what if, I don't know if I want to, I don't know. And they use these things like, what if my employee comes back and says they're not happy, and what am I going to really do? And I didn't know that after-tax cash was going to be, and they struggle. Owners really struggle. So our biggest challenge is what we call owner readiness. We have owner readiness, and then we focus on market readiness, and we focus on business readiness. Those are the three areas we drive. And owner readiness is where we have to spend most of our time.
And when you're addressing that, what can you say to them to get them comfortable with the idea that this is the thing to do, that this is your retirement, it's sitting there? The American dream is to sell your business, not to die behind your desk.
You would think, but I just had a guy who said, hey, John, I appreciate all your help. And yes, but I've decided I'm going to have a Viking funeral. And I'm just going to basically just go into a dumpster. They're going to light my body on fire, and then they're going to all dance around. And that's my exit. And I went, I mean, it is an exit. I mean, if that's where you want to go, it's a process, and ends up being, it's a very cyclical. So owners have to, when we're interviewing them, I spend most of my time making sure that they're actually going to sell, because I don't get paid until, unlike investment bankers, brokers can't get paid along the way. We can't take any kind of money. So investment bankers will charge 5 or 10 or 15 grand a month and say they'll offset that against a future commission, or they'll use that as a percentage. In the brokerage world, we're not allowed to by the state of California. So unless I sell it, I get nothing. So I could spend a year, or in this particular client, this 80-year-old, a year and 4 months, bringing him 5, 6 different offers of good. And now he's finally just said, I'm not going to sell it. And we had 120 people sign NDAs. We met, 7, 10 different groups on site. And then the owner's like, no, I've changed my mind.
So
really hard, really hard.
Wow.
That's why there's not a lot of brokers out there, right?
Yeah.
Coronado has like 75 real estate brokers in Coronado selling real estate.
And you're the only.
and I don't think we have 75 business transaction brokers in freaking San Diego.
Mm-mm.
I
No,
mean, no
yeah,
freaking way.
yeah.
I mean, it's because it's really hard because business owners, the business, you can track your business, right? So like I'm meeting a client and the first thing they ask about is price. And they said, and what first thing I asked them is I was explaining that I can't sell this unless you're willing to sell it. And I said, are you willing to sell it at fair market value? Because you said you want to sell your business. And they said, that depends. I go, I can only sell it at fair market value. I can't sell it at more than fair market value. I can try, but you need to be prepared that that's how people buy businesses is fair market value. Now we can wait for the ideal buyer, but there's still a range that we should be expecting. And if you're not willing to sell within that range, it's not worth me putting it on the market. So I spend an enormous amount of time figuring out what that range is, giving them after-tax cash calculations, figure out what their net working capital, figure out cash-free, debt-free, and make sure that they understand how this transaction is going to work before we even take a listing. Because it's not, because all that blows up the deal at the end.
Yeah.
And it's just better to know. I wish someone would have told me when I signed my agreement that I didn't know that cash-free, debt-free meant I had to pay off all my debt with after-tax cash. And then there was net working capital going to be included or not included. And that the government was going to pick off 35%,
Now, do you typically go through all that, those projections and cash flow yourself, or do you have them do it with their financial advisor, their CPA?
No, we do it. We do it for them. And then we send it to their advisor or ask them to send it to their advisor to review it. Because we're not a CPA. We're not doing tax. All we're saying is based on our formulas, based on the EBITDA, based on what we're seeing on the 12-month rolling networking, based on, here's kind of what, you've got to figure out what your AAA account looks like and how much you're going to have to pay in taxes. But here's a basic idea. So I just met with a client and he said $2 million in after-tax cash he would sell. And his wife said 2.5. And I said, okay. And when I did the BOV, it was 3 million that I think they're going to net. And I said, it doesn't change the purchase price. It just means that I think we can get you the number that you want. So I'm willing to take the listing because I think I can sell it at a place that you guys would sell it for. Now let's go figure out how to sell it for as much as we can, but at least we're realistic that they're going to sell it. That's really where the effort is.
Yeah. I know that there are a lot of business brokers out there that don't take that sort of diligent approach that you take, and they just get anybody in the door, get the listing, and if it sells, it sells. And if people are unhappy with the time it's taking, they wait, wait to see if it sells. There's so
that's why only 20-25% of the businesses sell.
Right.
I sell 70, almost 80% of mine. Because I take less than half of the people I meet, and we do our own internal review and audit of their books before we take the listing. I got to verify that their sales tax returns tie to their tax returns and tie to their fund, because I know that a sophisticated buyer is going to do that. And if I don't do it ahead of time, I'll have just wasted a whole bunch of time. So it needs to be a partnership. This is not a I'm looking for a listing so I can put it on a website and say, look at me, I'm busy. I'm in the business of selling businesses, and I want to be in escrow in 6 months and sell it in 9.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And if that's not what we're looking for, then I'm not your man.
Yeah. I know being a business broker is difficult, and I know several of them that I have respect for and their abilities and the work that they do. But when I think of John Ovrom, I don't immediately say business broker. I think you're an exit advisor. You're an exit engineer. You get the deal. You dig in there much more completely, kick the tires more thoroughly with the people, the owners, and make sure that they're going to go through with this.
And also, Dave, I think it's important to bring the advisors in. I think it's really important to be collaborative. I think you need to bring their CPA in. You need to get a good transaction attorney that understands, not a business attorney, a transaction attorney who understands this. And you need a financial planner who can help you, not just someone who's going to take your assets and put it under management or sell you insurance, but actually help you strategize. And we all work together as a group. That's the right way to do it. The right
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, what advice would you give most businesses that you see, as they're getting ready to sell, and you look back years up the road, things they might have done, and you think they might have done it better? What sort of issues do you typically see come up, either in their accounting, legal matters, what have you, the personnel, sales teams, that common mistakes that businesses make?
I would say that probably most business owners are very short-sighted. I don't think, looking far out into the universe of, like they say, start with the exit in mind. Look at your book. Convincing a business owner to do that, very few do. Most business owners, you're either a sales CEO, an ops CEO, or a finance CEO. And most of the people I work with are ops CEOs, which they started with either a service and they did it really well, or they're making a widget and they're doing it really well, or they're doing something and they've just grown a business out of their hard work ethic and integrity. And that's just who they didn't plan to do anything bigger or smaller. They just love what they do and they're really good and they're very good at it. But they're not good at managing. They're not good at running a business. They're good at running a lifestyle. And our biggest challenge is to convert it from an owner managed business to a professionally managed business. And when you move it to professionally managed, that's when you have qualified managers, not just because there's family and they have your same last name, but qualified managers with, invested into your accounting system and actually paying good quality accounting people to do the books, have a CRM, have an ERP system, have a marketing plan, have an org chart where you're not in the middle and everyone reports to you, and run it, design it to run it like a professionally run company in perpetuity. I think the best way to describe it is, I think business owners are helicopter parents. And what I don't want them to be a helicopter parent. I want them to raise this child, this company, and I want them to grow this thing up from elementary school, high school, into college, where it's out on its own and it's being successful on its own. You be that proud parent. You be up there in the stands and cheer mom when they're playing collegiate or wherever they are doing. But you don't have to be that person always controlling everything around that business. Let it grow up, let it mature. Most business owners don't let that happen. They can't, they have to control it. They're controlling people. They don't trust people. And that's the biggest problem I see when it comes to actually making a business saleable and making it valuable to somebody, is how do you take a helicopter parent and then say, okay, now you can take my child, versus look at my child and now you can work him. It's like your kid, is playing baseball, and then you got a club coach coming over going, hey, I want to take your kid because he's got a lot going. I can elevate him because I'm a professional coach. You're like, I've only done so much as a parent. I'm glad they've got it. Now you take them, club coach, and let them go. That's when you see those kind of business owners, those are the businesses that will be successful in a transition. Those that say, no, I'm the best, I'm me, I are the ones that I struggle with on an exit, even in a transaction, because they still think they're king.
Well, when business owners are looking for their club coach, they need to find John Ovrom. Because folks, John, I really appreciate your time and coming on and sharing all this information with our listeners. And I definitely want to have you back on again. We can go over specific topics in future podcasts that we do together.
Awesome.
Listeners, please subscribe and like this podcast, Selling Your Business with David King, and rate the episodes that you enjoy. Thanks again to John Ovrom, and please check out my book on Amazon, Selling Your Business, Begin with the End in Mind. And we will see you next time on Selling Your Business with David King. All right. That's it. Yep.